Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are, everybody. Today, my wonderful producer, Martha, is not able to join us. So I'm doing the driving, which is why some of the things I've got in the background are probably not working anymore. I noticed my virtual background is not quite right, but we'll work that out as we go along. Today's webinar is a more in-depth webinar. The Tuesday webinars that we've been doing are more about how to use the product and how to learn the basics of things like creating an Android app, creating a Windows app, creating a Mac app. We've got a lot of things going on. If I go to my special slides here, I think I can show this. Today is about a product called Codolex. Very, very exciting product. I like it. When I was first demoed it a few months ago now, and immediately it made an awful lot of sense to me. Great looking product, and it's going to be all about that today. If you're a Delphi developer already, this is going to be the kind of thing that you want to know about. Very, very interesting. The previous webinars are on the screen at the moment. The ones in green are the ones we've had already. If you go into the IDE, look on the welcome page. On the right-hand side, there's a thing called Learn, a Learn channel. All of those webinars to do with Android, iOS, and Windows and Mac appear in there. The Friday ones, this one will appear in there as well, but Friday, like I said, a bit more in depth. Let me just get me back on screen. And what I'm going to do is go live to my first guest, because today I have two guests. My first guest is Marco. Marco, every time I say your name, I get it wrong every time. So I always say Haz or Hayes.
No, almost. No. It's Geuze.
Geuze. Okay, I'm gonna have to
just stick with Marco, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Marco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, so Marco G from GDK. In fact, you are the G in GDK. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is.
I thought so. And Marco's the CEO of GDK, kind of overall. And we also have a very special guest with us today. And big surprise, drum roll, because today we have Jim McKeith. Hello, Jim.
Hello.
I think a lot of people should recognize who you are. Jim, I'm pleased to say, I think we've announced it before. We're going to say it again, though. Jim is the CEO of GDK USA. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
I also have beard envy because, like Mark, much more restrained beard, shall we say? In fact, I've known Jim for a number of years, and we're actually going to meet up. I think it's next week or the week after, isn't it? We're actually going to meet in person. Yeah, it'll be like some kind of collision of physics or something like that. So we should see what. Anyway, so hello, Nader Shalabi. He's very good MVP. He's in the chat. Both of you, I think you should be able to see the chat, but I will actually make sure that if you can't see the chat, I'll star any questions. We are playing a pre-recorded video today. What will happen is I'll play the video. It's about 36 minutes and talks about Codolex, what Codolex is and how it works. Afterwards, we're going to go back to Marco and Jim live, and we're going to ask questions about it. There will be a replay. The first thing people ask us is, are there going to be slides and replays? There will be a replay both on GDK's site and also on our own site. And Nader says, nice to see you, Jim, as well. So
nice to see you too, Nader.
There you go. Yeah, it's Marco. You know this is going to be both of us really sidelined here, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get to the video live, and then we'll come back in about 35 minutes for the replay.
First, let's look at what Codolex is and why we developed Codolex. Codolex is a low-code tool for Delphi. With a low-code tool, you develop your business logic in a visual way. And our goal with Codolex is to make development as easy as possible for every Delphi developer. We developed Codolex because we ran into several issues at GDK Software. Developing applications, especially when working with large Delphi applications, is not as fast as we would have liked. Often we do things the same way, which means retyping the same code, sometimes only with minor changes. And in addition, it's not always easy to quickly see what the business logic of a piece of code is. A developer often spends as much as 10 times more time reading code than writing code. So this is where a low-code tool can help you. So we at GDK Software have looked at a number of other low-code platforms. So these can solve some of the problems I just mentioned, but there's a major drawback to these platforms. So you have a very strong vendor lock-in because you only can run the applications completely in their platform using their software. And in addition, you can't integrate these applications with existing Delphi applications. So that's why we developed Codolex. So Codolex is a low-code tool for Delphi that allows you to visually build applications using flows and building blocks or activities. So these building blocks can be at a very low level, like changing a string or creating a variable, but also at a high level, so connecting directly to a REST service, for example. In addition, Codolex keeps the business logic visible and allows you to very easily work with data and databases. And finally, Codolex generates code based on flows. So as a result, you don't have a vendor lock-in. You always can access the source code. But enough talk for now. Let's do a demo of what you can do with Codolex. Codolex fully integrates with Delphi. That's why I will give the demo using a Delphi application. We also have a standalone Codolex application, which is especially useful if you have many large flows that you want to see in one screen or on a separate screen. But for now, we'll use the Codolex integration of Delphi. So as mentioned, with Codolex, you create visual flows, which you can use to design business logic. So instead of typing everything in, you can simply drag and drop building blocks into a flow to design your application. So let's start by creating a simple flow and show you how you can integrate this into your existing Delphi application. So I have here a Delphi application with a button without any code behind it. And we're going to connect Codolex to this button click. First, let's create a new flow. So as you can see here, we have an empty flow, a starting point, endpoint, and our list of building blocks we can use to create our application. Let's start with a simply hello world dialog. Okay, so here we have a starting point, the show dialog, and the endpoint, and we're going to use this flow in our main form. So what we can simply do is double click on the button and say, I want to use this flow we just created in my application. As you can see, Codolex generates the call to this specific flow. And if we run the application, we should be able to see a show message. There you go. So this is a very simple example. Let's make a slightly more complex one. So suppose you want to invoke a REST API. Let's say this one. I have here a REST API that allows me to retrieve information about the time zone. So let's pick this one. The convert time zone call, which is a post, and we can convert the time in a time zone to another time zone. So it's an easy one. You just have to post a JSON to this URL, and you will get a JSON value back with the information of the new time zone. So let's copy the URL. It is timeapi.io and then this link. So let's go to Delphi. We might need to use this show light dialog again and put a REST operation into my flow. We have to configure the URL, of course. So that was timeapi.io. And let's put in the body example here. And we put the result value here in a JSON result. Now I'm going to change this one to say, okay, we want to show the JSON result. And let's run the application. Oh, I made an error because you can work with variables in here. So we'll have to quote the URL. Now I didn't add the JSON type, so I have to put in here, let me double check. Application JSON. There you go. We'll get the JSON back from the time zone API. Now, as you've probably seen, we do have the actual source code here as well, which I told you that we generate when creating the code for the flow. So you can actually even debug your application and debug these flows using the code we generate once we run the application. So everything we did now in the REST operation is hard-coded. So we put in the URL here. What you usually want to do is create a parameter where we put in the URL, maybe an API key, etc. So we have the parameter we can simply drag into the flow, and you'll have your parameter for these REST operations as well. So it's really easy to call a REST service like this. With Codolex, it's now really easy to use this information, not as a string, as we've done here, but as an object, so an entity. To do this, we first create an entity in Codolex. So an entity is an object in Codolex which contains data. So this can be data from a database, but also in-memory data. So in this case, we want to use the results of this REST call in a structured way into a memory entity. So to do this, we first create a data source and then import the result entity. So I right-click on my data sources in Codolex. I say add data source. Let's call this time API. This is a REST data source, and I want to import my data, or better, the data structure. So we'll do this from a JSON, time API result. And what we now simply can do is paste in the result from the example here. And click next, and Codolex will simply generate the entities we're going to use. So as you can see here, we have the API result and the conversion result structure of our JSON data. So now what we now want to do is convert this the result of this REST operation to our newly created structure. So for this, we simply search for the JSON to entity, activity or building block. And we're going to say, okay, we want to have this result. We put in the result we get from the REST operation, and we'll simply go with this name. All right, let's delete the show dialog. And let's change the flow so that we can actually get back this entity. For that, I right-click on this JSON to entity building block or activity and say we want to have this as a result for the flow. Now let's get back to our call, and let's say we here have time result becomes the result of the test flow call. Now let's show the data somewhere, so I'll put a memo in. Just delete the existing lines. All right, and let's put in the results of this call. So for example, what we get back if we do the conversion is we will get the actual time in this case Los Angeles compared to the one from Amsterdam. So I want to display the hour in the memo. So let's get back to here. Let's say memo 1 lines.add, and let's go with the time result. Code completion doesn't work, but we have the conversion result here. Conversion result hour. We can have a string for this. Let's add the value here, I think. Yes, so here we have the hour. So now let's run again. Almost there. Oh, two strings. So let's do it differently, like this. To have a bit more clear code, or clean code. There you go. So now if we run, we should see the actual time in Los Angeles at this moment. As you can see, it's really easy to connect to REST services to build applications like this in a visual way. Now, almost every application also has a database that you work with. So that's why we have made it working with data and databases really easy with Codolex. So to show you this, what I'm going to do is create a simple price calculation using a demo database and using Codolex. So let's first show you the structure of the database. So what we have here is our price calculation database with some tables. We have a customer table, we have a product table, and a specific price per customer if we want. So I think in the customer table, we simply have the name, details, etc. The products table contains the product ID, but also the unit price. And so that is the default price, and the customer price table here has a specific record if a customer has a special price. So let's say we want to get a structure into Codolex where we could retrieve the right price from this database. To do that, let's go to Codolex or to Delphi again. And let's import this database structure into Codolex. And then as a start, load the data into a simple grid to show you the connectivity. So let's do that right now. I add a new data source. Let's name this price calculation. So now we go for a database. It is SQL Server. I want to import data. And let me see if I have it here already. I think so. Yes, I've already configured the connection to all my databases. So in this case, this is the price calculation database. Yes. Click next. And here you can see all the views and all the tables that exist in this database. So for the price calculation, we simply want to have the customers, the customer price, and the products table. So let's import these. And as you can see here, we now have another data source, price calculation. Close this one. With the three tables in here. If you want, you can also view this model, so how the associations between the tables are defined. But in this case, there is not no connection between these tables defined in the database. If they were, then you would have seen these lines between the tables. For now, we'll leave it as is. And let's first go to our application and display, for a start, the customers. So let me delete this one. Drop a TDB grid. A data source. And finally, the Codolex components. So we first have to put a Codolex project component somewhere. That can be on a data module, or it can be directly on your form. For now, I'll put it just here and configure this by selecting our Codolex demo project and have the data set here as well. We'll have to configure this to this data set to point to the Codolex project. And now we have multiple ways of displaying data in here. We can do this directly from a database. So we can select an entity. In this case, I could use the customers entity to display all the data in here. But you can also base this on a single entity or on a flow. So I'll go with this flow right now. So what I'm going to do is create a new flow in here. Let's name this get customers. Use the building block or activity get from database. Select the entity I want to use. So in this case, the customers. We'll get back a customer list. I'll leave the rest of it as is. You can specify here the where clause if you want, but we'll just go with every customer in the database, and we'll set this as a result for this flow. Now let's go back to my data set and select the flow I want to base this data set on. So in this case, it's the get customers. So Codolex generates the source code. Let me take this time to delete that one. So Codolex uses the flow we just defined to load the entities, so the customers, into my data set. And the data set will have to connect to the data source and the data source to our data set. Now let's retrieve all the fields as well. And run the application. Now, there's nothing happening here because we have to open the data set, of course. So let's delete that. Codolex. Oops. And run the application. There you go. So here we have all the data from the database. Using a flow, this one, to get all the customers into the grid. So let's now add the products in here as well. So I'll make this a bit smaller. And rename this and add one more for the products. So we'll do the same. Data source, Codolex data set, and like this. Yes. Products. Oops. And data set products. Now again, we have to connect this to the same project definition. We have to create a flow. Use the building block get from database with the product that is as a result. And base this on the get products. Now I'll drop another grid, the DB grid. And using the same way, we'll add all the fields, and in here all the columns as well. Oops, we haven't properly connected this one. Let me see what is happening here. There you go. Now we want to open this one as well. Data set, customers, and data set products. Let's just see if this works. Yes, of course. Okay, So now we have both the customers and products, and let's say if we want to select a customer and a product, we want to show the actual price. So to save some time, I prepared the complete demo up front, and I simply want to walk you through what I've done to get the price for a customer. So first of all, we have the get price flow. So this flow simply has two parameters. One is for the customer, one is the product, and we get the specific price record from the database. So we get the entity customer price, where we filter on both the product and customer ID, and we check if there is a result. So if we get a price back from this query, then that means that we have a specific price for this customer. So as you can see here, I've put in here a decision component. So the decision component simply, in this case, checks which results we have. And if we have a specific price for this customer, so if the result is true, then we'll simply give back the unit price for this customer. If not, then we call another flow, which is the default price flow. And I have it here. The default price simply gets the product ID and gives the unit price back. Now, if we go to the source code, you will see that I created another button in our example here, which takes the selected customer, the selected product, calls the get price flow, and shows the resulting price. So let me run this one. And load, for example, product 14. Let's say I want to get the price for this customer. I will get the 23 something. And I know that I put a special price in here for this specific customer. So if I select this one, I will get a different price, which is based on out of this this flow. So we'll follow the other route to the specific customer price. So it's really easy to work with these flows. You can combine whatever you want. So I can show you that I simply can well, drag drop things to build your business logic. And this is a really easy example, but you can imagine that you'll have a lot more complex examples in here, which simply results in the end in source code. So that's what I want to show you right now. So this specific flow, we can see here the preview button, where we can preview what kind of code Codolex generates when you build your application. So I can simply turn on the preview, and you will see here that we have the source code, and the same I can do with the test flow, for example, with the REST parameter and the JSON to entity we showed earlier. So if I go into here, you will see this is a bit longer, where we have all the source code that will generate based on this flow. Codolex works with, I wanted to save it, not to click that one. Codolex has ways of structuring your flows using classes as well. So you can, if you want, you can also preview the code for a complete class that we generate. So that's something you can see here. So this is a complete class. And there are a lot more very useful features of Codolex. For example, you can very easily see where you use a certain entity. So if I right click on an entity, I can say search usage, and you can immediately see in which flow and in which element, so in this case an activity, you have used this entity. So this can be done for database related entities and for REST entities or in-memory entities. So it's an very easy way, especially if you have a large project with a lot of tables, a lot of data, a lot of flows, to see where a certain entity is used. You can also do this on flows or on other elements in Codolex. I've showed you as well the view model, where you have, this is funny, let me bring this a bit closer to each other, where you have the model viewer and editor, where you can see how your data is structured right from Delphi. You have the option to make flows public, private. So a private flow can only be accessed from another flow within the same class. You can make it static, where you don't have to create a class. So the price calculation class in this case. As for the flows itself, we do have a lot of activities or building blocks already available here. So like time operations, database operations for transactions, the structural elements where you can have loops in here as well. So you can loop through entities, for example, simply drag a loop in here, build your flow on top of that. Encoding, well, all kinds of activities we already support. In case you do not find the right activity in here, or you want to change it a bit, we also have the option to put in a code snippet. So we can simply drag in a snippet in here, and you can provide Delphi code to build your own business logic if you want within a flow. Although we always recommend to use as much as the available building blocks, because it's simply easier and faster to develop your applications like that. Now, as you've perhaps seen as well, there is a validation system in Codolex available as well. So if you drag in elements which are not completely configured, or you delete elements and your activity is based or needs information from other elements, then the validation kicks in and you can see which part of the application is not right or where you have to provide extra information. So, and finally, there's a way of building your own activities. So with Codolex, we provide packages where you can build your own activities with. In this case, I've already done this with the horse server, which is a REST service. You can simply drag in. So this is a custom activity you can compile, but you can build your own building blocks and add them to Codolex. So you're completely flexible in the way you work with Codolex. Okay, I hope this gives you a good impression of Codolex. So let's have a quick look at Codolex roadmap before it's time for Q&A. So in the coming months, we will focus on 3 areas. First, we want to continue adding new activities or building blocks to Codolex. After all, this is the way you can build your applications faster than you're used to. So we will continue to develop activities. You can think of building blocks for AI, machine learning, but also work with string utilities, encryption, FTP, and a lot more. We're also developing the REST server for Codolex, so where you can securely publish flows, so in business logic, as REST services. I expect a release for this in February, and it will make it really easy to extend your application with REST services. And finally, as I mentioned, Codolex allows you to develop your own activities. Now, we already built a couple of these own building blocks internally at GDK Software, but we see that a lot of other companies also are building valuable building blocks. So in time, we want to be able to offer the possibility to share these building blocks with each other. So, for example, you can think of specific building blocks for connecting to Exact Online, DocuSign, or connecting to Exchange or Office 365, or specific pieces of logic that can be shared in these building blocks. Well, I hope this short demo of Codolex has given you a good idea of the possibilities of Codolex. We just touched the surface of what you can do with Codolex. But I think for now, this should be enough, and we have plenty of time for the Q&A. So let's get back to that.
Well, that was an excellent presentation, and we've had a lot of questions now. Let me just make sure we can hear everybody. Joining me is Marco, the CEO of GDK Software, and also young Mr. McKeith himself, back from the wilds of, you're in California at the moment, isn't that right, or somewhere like that?
I'm in California.
But he's
correct.
now the CEO. Yeah, so there's lots of fruit everywhere. CEO of GDK USA. Used to do what I do, and he's moved on to better things, which is how we all do. It's just in a way. So I start some questions, and I'll just bring a few of them up. This is, I actually used to work with Peter Turtle years ago, so I actually know him in real life. Him and I are of a similar age. I think Peter lives in Italy or something like that now, but he is British. As he says, very nice stuff. Marco, how much of this was inspired by Mendix, if anything? I'll let you work that out yourself.
Well, yeah. As it always goes with these things, you look at other products, other systems that are available. Mendix is certainly one of them, another low-code tool that is available. You also have OutSystems, for example, and a lot more. So there are quite a lot of these systems available. Main problem with all these existing low-code systems is that you don't end up with the source code, and that is sort of a problem that we think is quite huge, because in the end, you will have if you build something in one of these other low-code systems, you have a vendor lock-in. You have to keep using their platform, their systems, and that annoyed us a bit. So yes, it's inspired by a lot of things, and not only by low-code systems, but also by workflow systems. But in the end, we wanted to create something better that you can use, but also own. So you can build things with Codolex, and you will end up with the source code, the actual source code you use in your application. So I think that's a huge difference if you compare this to the existing systems.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the thing is, people always say, "Oh, well, this is a really cool low-code system," and they talk about building quite often mobile apps or something like that. And yeah, you know, in some of these tools, you can create a mobile application, for example, very quickly. But the problem is, at that point, the app itself is stored on that person's website, that company's website, or some other, content delivery network or something. Yes. And that's the key thing about your stuff, which I like, is the fact that as you're dragging this really cool user interface around, I like the fact that I can see the code being created. And to me, that is a very key selling point, because Delphi has always been, if you want to work out how the runtime library works, open up the source code.
Have a look.
Why is it my date code thing isn't working properly or something like that?
Yes.
And I like the fact that I think I've mentioned this before. I think it's very brave of you to have a business model that goes, here, have all the source code. But it may be brave, but it's also, more importantly, the right thing to do. So I admire you for that.
We exactly. We're developers ourselves as well, so we use the product internally, and we want to have a look at what's happening under the hood. So yeah, it makes sense to do it that way. Yeah.
When Marco was showing me Codolex at first, I was like, okay, I've seen a lot of these low code tools. I was like, I'm not too excited. But then he's like, oh, but then you get the source code, but then it gives you, you get all this stuff. I'm like, oh, this is ticking all the boxes of what makes it different, what makes it compelling and interesting. So yeah, I agree that the Codolex there's a lot of other low code tools out there, but Codolex is kind of like done the right way, if that makes sense, at least in my opinion, because it does give you the source code. It is extensible. It has plugins, and it doesn't lock you into a platform. And yeah, it's like the Delphi way, right? I mean, that's the thing with Delphi. You don't have to keep paying for a Delphi subscription. You don't have to keep, or Delphi gives you the source code. Codolex, yeah, it's the same thing. And it integrate, yeah, it's great.
I mean, to be clear, the reason I wear the Embarcadero shirt like this is because I want to differentiate and make people understand that I am here representing Embarcadero. That's what I'm here for. And Jim is representing GDK. I'm pointing to Jim like that. Well, I can tickle his head, but there you go, tickle his head. And Marco, which is that way, is here GDK. But you are tech partners as well, and you've got the perfect solution there with having Jim as your guy in America as well, but in North America. But
absolutely,
I want to emphasize that Embarcadero are not. This is not a sales pitch by Embarcadero. When we do these webinars, it's because we believe there's a genuine value in what we're showing for people, and we believe that it's something they're interested in. We may well show other people with other products in the future that may be direct competitors. I'm having a series of chats with people, and some of these people are in competition with you, but not necessarily in Codolex, because I think you've pretty much stolen the march on these guys. But you offer, because I know GDK offer other services as well. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like Delphi upgrades, so converting from Delphi 5 and 7 to the latest version, development services, consultancy. Yeah, so we do a lot more. Yeah.
And you're going to teach Jim how to program in Delphi as well, I understand.
Eventually,
I'll let Jim answer that one. Nah.
Yeah,
that will be the other way around. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think he's going. You never know.
Yeah.
Don't let him near any brain interfaces or anything like that, because he will just wire up the whole of your office or something crazy. Jim, you'll be pleased to know I do have a webinar coming up where I'm going to program a knife throwing robot, and I'm channeling my inner Jim McKee. So yeah.
How exciting.
Some people in marketing are a little bit concerned about this. But I think a full demo of what you can do with Internet of Things. So there you go. I've just got to get an arm that can actually put enough, what's the word I'm looking for, force behind it, so it doesn't just throw it on the floor or in my leg or something. But Jim and I both like collecting knives. Actually, it's one of our little things.
Yeah.
We're both weird about these things. There is some talk of swords at some point as well, but that'll be another day. Okay, so I did start some of the questions. Let me just go through to those.
Actually, so I will point out, I don't know if you can see or not, but this is a Borland leather coat I'm wearing. That's a deep cut there.
That's just not fair, is it? Jim's got the
all the nice stuff.
I must talk to you. We're going to do a webinar on the 13th about the history going back from Turbo Pascal forwards, and I have to get you involved in that as well. So you'll have to appear, and I might even try and rope in David I if he's not off snowed in Colorado or wherever he lives now, so something like that. But yeah,
Oregon, yes.
So lots of people saying things like, "Oh, good to see you, Jim," etc., etc., etc. Let me just get rid of that caption for a second. There you go. Yeah, a lot of people very pleased to see Jim. But the most important one is actually more related to the product, which is this example seems to be a graphical way to construct SQL queries. And I think you had something to say about that. Is that right, Marco?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more than just that. So it's not only that you create your your queries in a visual way. But you can also have the business logic and, for example, REST operations and many more building blocks. So the get from database I showed you earlier is just one of the activities you use. So one of these building blocks. But there are a lot more, like indeed connecting to a REST service or converting JSON, reading in CSV files, or database related stuff. So it is graphical, yes, but there's a lot more than just the SQL part. You can build your complete business logic of your application in a structured way, indeed, including SQL, but also a lot more. So, yes.
Yeah, so the answer
I
is
think.
no, it's not a SQL thing. It does more than
A
that.
lot more, yeah.
Yeah, and I know you, as you said in the video presentation, because I did pay attention, even though I have hundreds of messages coming in about apparently there's something going on, there might be something happening with the server somewhere, and and so I got quite a lot of messages about that going. It's been an interesting week to be in developer relations, put it that way. Jim, you dodged a bullet there, I think. I'm sure you've had one in the past, though. Yeah, it's all good stuff. What else have we got? Yes, I'll address this whilst we're at it as well. Some people said, the notification for the webinar came up and said how to create a real Mac app. My fault. Many of you that are regulars will know I normally have producer Martha in the background, who is basically, she is a force of nature when it comes to organizational and admin skills. I'm sure Jim will agree. She works incredibly hard, and unfortunately she's sick at the moment, so she's not around in the background, and so I'm doing all the button pressing, which is why I keep them to look down and things like that. Normally I let her she knows me enough to know which buttons to press. I didn't even know we could change the title. I didn't even spot it there, and that's why it said the wrong thing. The things that went out in the notifications and the emails were correct. It did actually say Codolex, and some of them we even spelt the name of the product correctly sometimes as well, just to really make Marco happy, because I don't in my brain I put an extra E in there, somehow Codolex.
Yeah.
It's code. But
that's right. On the other hand, with Codolex, you can also create a real Mac app, because Codolex is cross-platform, of course. You generate source code, so if it's there is a link to that. Yeah, you can simply use. No, you can just use the Codolex for whatever you want. So for FireMonkey as well. I've showed you the VCL, but it works for FireMonkey too. So yeah.
You know what? I hadn't actually occurred to me that because it's back-end logic. Business logic. Yeah, it's going to be portable. That is a very good point.
Oh, exactly. Usually most of it is just indeed Delphi code. So as long as you don't use any specific things for Windows, for example. So we have some of these activities are Windows only, of course. Yeah. But most of it you can just use in mobile apps as well as macOS. So yeah.
So, Jim, I mean, it's kind of a question for Jim, really. You're based in the US still. I mean, you're not like moving over to Holland or Brazil or somewhere. I'm aware of, anyway. Jim's really into Brazil, or sometimes he liked it over there. I know that much. And you have offices in Brazil as well. So, you know. Mm-hmm. But what's the plan with the USA then? Because, you're fairly well established, Marco, in Europe, and you've got UK offices, and you're pretty well established in Brazil as well. Jim, you've got plans for the US. What sort of plans have you got then?
So a big part of it is just opening up GDK services to more people in the US as well. It makes it easier for US based companies to work with a US based company. But then there's a actually, I was surprised when we announced, opening the office here. Got a lot of people reaching out, wanting to work with us and stuff. So, GDK's
even though it was you, even though you're in charge.
I know, right?
Yeah.
GDK is a great company that does a lot of great stuff, and so they're well known, and it's great to just extend GDK's availability to more people, and build out more, do more things. So it's exciting. There's a lot of projects we have working on as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing Marco emphasized before when I talked to him about a couple of things was that you are very definitely a Delphi place as well. That is
Yes.
your key focus as a company, as GDK, is that you're a Delphi software house. I don't know what else Delphi services. I don't know. There's kind of a nebulous term, I'm sure. I haven't thought of the group term for it, but that's your focus, which is why obviously we're keen to sort of promote what you do and things like that as well, because just to be clear with developer relations, I'm not biased. I'll have any tech partner come and do presentations, things like that, as long as what they're showing is legitimate, valid. I'm not going to show vaporware unless it's actually tangible. But the same with component developers as well. Quite often there are competing component developers that say, oh, I want to do a webinar about this, but not if you talk about this product set. It doesn't happen very often, but unfortunately, no. I'm here for the Delphi people and the Rad Studio people, and that's what I like about you guys. You're the same as well. Okay, well, we actually hit the hour perfectly. I don't know whether you two want a final word before we go.
Actually, I want to circle back. One thing about Codolex that I really like is, and Marco showed this, is that you can use the workflows become like components, right? And so that's one thing I think most people, the rad demos where you drag and drop the built-in components on your application and use them is cool. But when you're building any application with any level of complexity, it really becomes more about the reuse, right? And Codolex does that really well. It gives you the ability to make reusable business logic like a component that you can then reuse again. And that's what's really going to make your applications productive, especially if you're building like multiple applications in the same domain, right? It's really exciting. I like I said, I really feel like it's the low code system done right. So
yeah, and I have to say, when Marco first demoed it to me, it clicked straight away. I knew it. I could see immediately what you were trying to get at, and I'm like, this is how it should be, and I like that. I like the fact that I made some notes as well. I like the fact it imposes some structure, and because of the way you're using graphical elements to sort of line things up, it means that it's repeatable structure as well, so that you can go and give it to a relatively junior person who understands how to use Codolex, but maybe doesn't understand how to write that code in the first place, and give it to a senior person, and they'll generate the same code. Maybe not always, but essentially they will do. That is something that is actually a good thing about it, because create the business logic in big organizations, American Airlines or someone like that, who've got lots of systems. The business logic is 99% of everything when it comes to the Delphi stuff, because it's the back end. And I think that you're onto something with this product. I really do, and I like it personally.
Absolutely.
And it's not difficult to do a webinar where we talk good things about it. Otherwise, we'd be shorter, and I go, let's move on. Let's talk about weather or something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would say, Marco, before we go?
I can do another hour, but no. I think let's.
You've got Jim and I on here. You don't make.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. We can easily fill the hour. No, there's a lot of we have our YouTube channel, so at Codolex, where you can find a lot more if you want to go a bit more in depth in how you create these things. You have the Codolex website indeed. So there's a lot more to find. I think we can share the link to YouTube as well, where we have a lot of videos on how to get started with Codolex. And indeed, if you want to try it out, just download it. You can find it at codolex.com. You can download a trial version. Just get started.
If they scan that QR code there, it will actually take them directly to the Codolex website. But I've also put your GDK software link on the bottom as well, so they can go and do it. Well, look, thanks a lot, guys. Great webinar. You're both a couple of professionals at this. Jim, you're improving for your first webinar. I'm very impressed.
Yeah,
but it's always good to talk to both of you. I get very well with both of you, and I appreciate
Likewise.
you coming on. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of this in the future.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks.
See you.
Bye,
Cheers.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Well, good to see Jim. People were kept asking me, "Oh, where's Jim? Where's Jim?" And a few things happened in the past, and things are happening for us at the moment at Embarcadero as well. But Jim and I keep in touch. We are good friends, and he's actually visiting me next week as well. And we're actually, for the first time in many years, because we're not ever met in person, we're actually going to meet up as well, so that should be exciting. Anyway, thanks to all of you that joined along. I think we answered all your questions. I'm just making sure. Thanks to Nigel and Terry and Peter Turtle. Thanks a lot, Pete. Glad you're still around and still doing Delphi after all these years, same as me, and Sean as well, and Nigel and Charlie Chambers. Yeah, Charlie's always here as well. All right, well, thanks a lot. We are back in, let me see, what date? 23rd, so next Tuesday, if you're watching this live. If you're watching the replay, then depending on what time you watch this replay, 23rd is our next webinar, and that is how to create a real Linux app, step-by-step guide. I'm hoping that's going to be okay, because I've got a few issues with servers and things like that. It's actually interfering with my ability to do a few things as well. But I have special ways of getting files, I'm sure. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.